Welcome back to Football Unspoken. Today we're going to be talking all about Wrexham. Rob, do you know where Wrexham are currently in the league, in League One?
I believe they're second.
Correct. They're second with a 6-gap point difference between them and third with about 5 games to go. So I'd say they're close to certain to get another back-to-back-to-back promotion and be in the championship. But despite them about to have their third promotion in as many seasons, I haven't heard anyone talking about it, which kind of brought me back to the thinking. We had this discussion literally about a year ago when the exact same scenario happened when they were in League 2. A few weeks before they got promoted, we had this exact same discussion. I said that was the League 2 to League 1. And so I'm bringing the discussion up to you again. I said this time I want to ask you, is Wrexham a bit of a vanity club?
Bit of a vanity club. I mean, yes and no, because it's one of those where, don't get me wrong, it's obviously a bit of vanity in terms of Ryan and Rob they're not British nationals. They probably don't give too much about football / soccer before this. Before Wrexham, they probably didn't care overly, and it was just an investment opportunity. So yeah, it's probably a bit of a vanity club. In the same way you look at maybe like a RB Salzburg is a bit of a vanity club, but at the same time, it's really harsh to be sitting there going like, oh yeah, Wrexham fans, you don't deserve this because you're a vanity club. Like they're still a club at the end of the day. They've still got ties to their home fans. They've still got ties to that city. So I think, yeah, it's probably fair to call them a vanity club, but it's also pretty harsh considering the situation they were in. They were non-league and they still had fans coming through, and they've still got the same fans coming through. So yeah, it's probably true, but a bit harsh.
My point was more around every time they seem to get promoted, everyone comes out the woodwork. They're huge Wrexham fans on social media. All the news outlets are now reporting extensively on Wrexham for a couple of weeks, and they'll just forget for another year. And that's exactly, as I said earlier, the position we were in a year ago when we had this discussion about Wrexham getting promoted from League 2. No one was talking about it. Ironically, still is one of our most popular videos on the channel because we posted that video 2 or 3 weeks before the official promotion happened mathematically. And because we posted before the hype, our video was high up when people were doing the searches for Wrexham around that time. Ironically, this video might do the same thing. So following up on that is, why do you think people come to follow Wrexham, around the promotion time and then just fall away completely? Obviously, that's football in a nutshell, but it feels like an extreme with Wrexham.
Well, I think it's the highs and lows of football at the end of the day. The valleys and troughs, because you end up in a situation where We Are Wrexham comes out, the new season comes out on Disney Plus. Everyone goes, oh, Wrexham, they love them. And then realistically, how much League One football does the normal football fan watch? Like it's not much. I watch a bit of League 2 football because I live in Wimbledon, and Wimbledon's like a 15-minute walk down the road. So I'll go and have a pop in on a Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff because I can't watch it on TV, which is the stupidest law on the face of the planet. And I still hate it, and I will rant about it at some point. But I think it's just a case of, realistically, when you've got Premier League and Champions League and Europa and UEFA and even the Conference League and then FA Cup and League Cup, you've got just 6 or 7 competitions that people care way more about, just locally with local like UK teams, over a League One competition, and then you add in your Bundesliga, Liga and La Liga. You end up in a situation where League One realistically is so far down the list and no one's really going to be overly concerned about it. But then you end up in a situation where you get to the end of the season, you start thinking about it, and you're like, oh, hang on, Wrexham have done ridiculously again, because you haven't looked at it for 6 months, and you go, oh, Wrexham have done really well, we're going to see them in the Championship, we're going to get to watch them on Sky Sports even more, and it's going to be lots of fun. So I think it's just a simple case of out of sight, out of mind is what I would call it.
This is going back now. Some teams who also did back-to-back promotions over the years. Norwich have done it. Swansea have done it. All of those teams did their back-to-back promotions and then end up crashing and burning, to be honest. And I have some concerns for Wrexham, not to the same extent, but actually from a different lens. Part of why they've been able to do these 3 promotions, and who knows what will happen when they get to the championship, is because of that sort of overspending they've been allowed to do through all the commercial investment they've received. If the owners pull back and don't invest as heavily, maybe if they got to a Premier League or whatever, is that club at a huge risk of then crashing and burning? As in, it's just being held up by that commercial side.
I mean, it obviously is. I think a lot of smaller clubs have that problem. I would be interested to know if their stadium would be Premier League ready. To be honest, that's my with Rob and Ryan being the face of the club, which is really interesting because there's almost no other club in the world has the face of the club being off-field chairmen, an off-field owner. Normally, the face of the club would be your players, whereas I think up until they make the Premier League, Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds are the 2 biggest names, and even when they get into the Premier League, they're still going to be the 2 biggest names available to that club. Guys like Paul Mullen, who you hear about, no one knew who that guy was until Wrexham. It's just the way it works because not many people realistically follow those lower leagues to that level. And I wouldn't be surprised if when they get in the Championship, you actually start seeing Wrexham kits getting sold in like a JD Sports, in that situation, because they already have a marketplace and people know who they are.
Yeah, I quickly looked up the stadium thing for you. So currently it's 13,000, but they already have plans to expand the stadium to a 55,000 seater, which would make it Premier League ready. So that's already underway and in progress. What's interesting about what you were saying there, and I didn't think about this till you mentioned about how the club's appeal and global viewing changes when they make the championship, because suddenly, the championship is a lot more viewable like around the world than League One is. There's actually a lot of TV stations, even in North America where I am, that will actually show the championship again. So there's no chance of League One. As part of that, when they've had so many promotions back to back, there's a real opportunity or real chance that they're going to make it all the way to the Premier League. Now, if you're a player around the world who's on the cusp of being a Premier League player, you're like, I'll take a swing on Wrexham because I get to be in the documentary, which is good for my, viewing, money, exposure, and I could actually end up in the Premier League. So if you're a player looking at, you're like trying to decide between one of those teams, maybe a Wolves, Norwich, like I'll do with these teams that are either right on the cusp of the Premier League or up and down those yo-yo clubs. Wrexham almost seems like I'll take a punt on this.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing on the player front is obviously probably since David Beckham, he was probably the first big football name to get these major brand deals. And I think since that moment, it has become almost as much about what's happening off the field as what's happening on the field. And especially for football players, with being able to create a brand for themselves, it allows them to, guys moving into fashion, guys moving into music, it opens a lot more doors for them. And if, as you said there, if you're a player who is not massively well known, but you're talented enough to be on the cusp of Premier League, Wrexham is a fantastic shout because even if you don't get the kind of wages that you'd want, your Instagram following is going to boom immediately. If you have TikTok, that's going to boom immediately. You're going to be able to have Ryan Reynolds or Rob McElhenney be in a couple of your posts or videos. You can tag them, you can get them involved. It creates an exposure that goes beyond football. And obviously you need to have that in modern football. You need to be in a situation where you can endorse yourself, because that's when you start getting the big TV rights, the bigger and as well as the bigger prize monies. So I think that's the situation. I think if they can get to the Premier League, I'm not too concerned about them because I think Rob and Ryan are invested and they want to keep this club going. What does concern me is if they stagnate in the Championship for 2 or 3 seasons, and then you start adding on this expansion, which is probably going to be one of the biggest expansions of a stadium in football in general. To be honest, you're adding 40,000 seats into a stadium, so it'll be very interesting to see how that goes if they can't get out of the Championship quickly.
This Wrexham Live, which is what's happening, is like a case study, almost what's going to come in football in the next 5-10 years. Because to your point, they make it to the Premier League and Ryan and Rob make a huge amount of money. suddenly everyone who's got some capital on the side and has a brand in front of them too, like a personal brand, is licking their lips and thinking, hey, they can do that, maybe I can do that too. And there's a big gold rush of people running down to League Two and below to try buy up clubs and replicate it and make a boatload of money. Or you have the opposite factor where, as you said, they get stuck in the championship for 2 or 3 years, the momentum fades and they've overspent now on the stadium and it all catches up with them too fast. And those investors I was just talking about, they go the opposite way. They look at this and go, you know what, this is too risky business. And investment towards the EFL teams kind of gets pulled back. So I think there's a interesting live case study happening before our eyes here with Wrexham.
I don't think it's going to have a huge impact either way. And what I mean when I say that is obviously I think you'll have a couple of boys putting punts on, but football ownership's not easy, and you see that all the time with Daniel Levy getting protested all the time. Mike Ashley came in and he was the hero of Newcastle in the first 2 seasons. People forget this. Everyone loved him for the first season and a half, for 2 seasons. And then it fell off, and it was just continual protests and awful. And he couldn't walk out in public without some Newcastle fan giving him shtick. So I think that there's definitely potential there, 100%. But you also need to understand that Wrexham and Ryan and Rob, I feel like because of the investment, because of the money, they're not actually being given their dues a little bit. And the fact that getting Wrexham from where they are to where they were to where they are now has been a fantastic admin job at the end of the day, to be able to pull in all this revenue and do it. Whether or not people would like to say it's fair, doesn't matter. They haven't breached any fair play rules. And that is an impressive feat. And it's through utilizing not just your commercial sponsorship, but creating the hype around the club and making sure that people want to watch them. And I think that so if they do become a success, the big thing is that you're not going to have the same hype around every club. You're not going to get this situation where the next team someone goes and buys, Blythe Spartans, and I can't see them building the same amount of hype at the end of the day, because I just think you're in a situation where Wrexham was almost perfect because it was a Welsh club. It's quite a small town. You're able to highlight the town. You've got the 2 very charismatic chairman and owners as well. And I think it was just a bit of a perfect storm. And I don't think it's something that'll be replicated easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. What do you think the future holds for Wrexham? Do you think I was right calling Wrexham a bit of a vanity club, or was I being too harsh on them? Would love to hear from you. And until next time, this has been Football Unspoken. Cheers.